Imagine walking through the streets of a city that never sleeps, surrounded by thousands of people, yet feeling completely and utterly invisible. You are there, breathing the same air, walking the same pavement, but to the world, you are nothing more than a shadow against a concrete wall. This was the life of Samuel. Samuel didn't have a home, he didn't have a family, and most days, he didn't even have a name. To the thousands of commuters rushing past him every morning at the central station, he was simply the beggar at the pillar. He sat there every single day, draped in a coat that had seen better decades, holding a small plastic cup that rattled with the lonely sound of 3 or 4 copper coins. His eyes were always fixed on the shoes of the people passing by. He knew the world through footwear, expensive leather loafers, scuffed sneakers, high heels clicking with purpose. None of them ever stopped. Why would they? To them, Samuel was a finished story, a man who had reached the end of his road and decided to stay there. And the worst part was, Samuel believed them. He believed that his life was a sequence of cold nights and empty stomachs, and that this was all he deserved. He wasn't waiting for a change, he was just waiting for the day to end. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, when the air felt heavy and the spirits of the city were dampened, a man stopped. This wasn't a quick toss of a coin. This man wore a suit that cost more than Samuel had seen in a lifetime, but he didn't look down. He knelt. He got down on his level, right there in the dirt and the rain, until his eyes were even with Samuel's. The businessman didn't reach for his wallet. Instead, he looked at the small cardboard sign Samuel held, which read, "I am hungry, please help." The man looked at the sign, then looked Samuel in the eyes, and said something that felt like a lightning bolt through a frozen soul. He said, "You are a businessman, Samuel, just like me. Why are you sitting on the floor?" Samuel felt a surge of anger. Was this a joke? Was this wealthy man mocking his misery? He looked at his tattered clothes, his dirty hands, and his empty cup. He rasped out a bitter laugh and said, "Look at me. I have nothing. I am a beggar. I am not like you." The businessman didn't flinch. He reached into his pocket, took out a crisp $100 bill, and placed it firmly in Samuel's hand. But he didn't let go of the bill immediately. He held Samuel's gaze and spoke with a voice that was calm, steady, and terrifyingly serious. He said, "You have a product, Samuel. You are selling your story, your time, and your presence. Currently, you are selling it for pennies because that is what you think you are worth. But I see a merchant who has lost his way. I am giving you this because I believe in your potential to trade something better. Change your mind about who you are, or this $100 will be the last thing you ever see." The man stood up, adjusted his coat, and walked away into the rain, leaving Samuel trembling. For the first time in years, Samuel didn't look at the shoes of the crowd. He looked at his own hands. He looked at the bill. $100 was enough to eat for weeks. It was enough to buy a bottle and forget the cold. But those words, "You are a businessman," began to itch at the back of his brain. They were a seed planted in a desert. That night, Samuel couldn't sleep. He sat in the dark alleyway, the rain drumming on the trash cans, and he thought about his life. He realized that for 10 years he had accepted the label the world gave him. He had walked with a slouch because he felt small. He had spoken in a whisper because he felt unheard. He had asked for scraps because he thought he was a dog. But what if the man was right? What if the only difference between the man in the suit and the man in the rags wasn't money, but the way they viewed the world? The next morning, Samuel did something he hadn't done in a decade. He went to a public restroom and washed his face until his skin stung. He used some of the money to buy a clean, simple shirt and a pair of scissors to trim his matted beard. He didn't look like a king, but he no longer looked like a ghost. He went back to his pillar, but he didn't sit down. He stood. He stood tall. He put away the cardboard sign that begged for pity. Instead, he bought a few packs of pens and some small flowers from a local wholesaler. When people walked by, he didn't rattle a cup. He offered a choice. He offered value. He told himself, "I am a merchant. I am providing a service."
His voice grew stronger, his back grew straighter. People who had ignored him for years suddenly started to notice him. They didn't see a beggar, they saw a man working. They saw dignity. And dignity, Samuel realized, was the most expensive currency in the world. Months turned to a year. The pillar at the station remained, but the man beside it changed. Samuel moved from selling pens to owning a small kiosk. He moved from the kiosk to a small shop. Every time he felt the old shadow of the beggar creeping into his mind, he would stop and whisper to himself, "I am a merchant." He realized that the hunger in his stomach was never as dangerous as the hunger in his mind. The moment he stopped seeing himself as a victim of the world stopped treating him like one. One afternoon, a man in a familiar suit walked past the station. He looked older, perhaps a bit more tired, but his eyes were the same. Samuel recognized him instantly. He stepped out from his shop wearing a suit of his own and blocked the man's path. The businessman looked up, confused, until Samuel smiled. It wasn't a smile of a man who wanted something. It was a smile of an equal. "You probably don't remember me," Samuel said, his voice rich and full. "But a year ago, you told me I was a businessman. You gave me $100, but more importantly, you gave me a different mirror to look into. You told me that if I didn't change my mind, my life would never change." The businessman looked at the shop, then back at the man standing before him. A slow, knowing smile spread across his face. He didn't say, "I told you so." He simply nodded and said, "I see you finally decided to trade in a better market, Samuel." The truth is, most of us are sitting by a pillar in our own lives. We aren't all holding plastic cups, but we are holding to beliefs that keep us small. We tell ourselves we aren't talented enough, that we are too old, too broken, or that the world is against us. We wait for someone to come by and drop a miracle into our laps, not realizing that the miracle is already sitting in our own minds waiting to be used. Your life is a reflection of the story you tell yourself when nobody else is listening. If you tell yourself you are a failure, you will find a way to fail even when success is staring you in the face. But if you change the narrative, if you decide right now that you are a creator, a fighter, or a person of value, the world will eventually have no choice but to agree with you. The rags you wear are temporary. The mindset you keep is permanent. Change your mind, and you won't just change your life, you will finally start living it.